Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Hope you guys are doing well. Today is Friday, August the 29th. It's the end of the week. It's also the end of the month as well. We do have a long weekend with Labor Day over the week. With Labor Day next week and the start of the new month. All right. Before we get into the charts coming into today, we do have some red folder news at 8:30. And we also did have Nvidia earnings yesterday. The overall market, you can see we end up having this nice push towards the upside yesterday. We're still fairly chopping around here. The ES recently just hit your all-time highs. We're actually rejecting off this level. Coming to market open, we're kind of just back inside of the range that we have established for this week. We'll kind of talk about some of the charts here in a second. Before we do that, good morning. What's up, everyone? Hartik, what's up? Jeff, Victor, E, good morning. Ryan, Non-Tolly, Moni, Daniela, I am. Good morning, Robert, 50. What's up, Mozzie, 50. Cinna, Robert, Detecto, Darth, Diana, what's up? Miss Reggie, Juan, Arnold, Martin, Sam, Jayton, Quita, Gabby, Jay, Bartik, Charles, Cedric, True. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Hope you guys are doing well. Let me pull up the Forex Factor here before we get started. As for this week, the key things that we have, as for today, what we have coming into market open is you have core PCE that is going to be at 8:30. So we'll develop our game plan, wait for 8:30, and then if anything changes, we'll talk about that here. So that's going to be at 8:30 core PC, and then we do have revised consumer sentiment, which is going to be at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So that's what we have coming to today here. Now let's go on to some of the charts. We'll take a look at the major indices first, and then we'll go on to some of the tech names that we have. So for the overall market here on the ES, we recently just hit our all-time highs, as you can see. Our key level just got hit, which is our 6580. So we recently had a nice push towards the upside last Friday. Now you can see we slowly gravitated up and towards our all-time highs level. Now we just hit it yesterday and we're having a little bit of rejection coming to market open. I would be very cautious coming into today for any more upside, especially on the ES, just because we hit our all-time highs and we now also have the NQ, which is lagging the overall market. So we'll talk about that divergence that we've had between the SPY and Qs and why it's been so hard to long tech towards the upside. But levels coming to today here, what I have marked out is your previous all-time highs, which is your 6508. This is the level that you'd like to see price reclaim if you want to be looking for positions towards the upside, right? You would have to see the reclaim, and the best long in my position is going to be the reclaim back above your 6507. So this is the key level on the higher time frames. This is also, you can see we have multiple touches here coming to this week. This is also your previous all-time highs now. So we have to reclaim this level if you want to see any sort of continuation towards the upside. As you can see so far, we're showing some weakness here in the pre-market, getting back underneath their previous all-time highs. As for this week's price action in itself, we're actually not that bullish. You can see we've been making higher lows and we've been having this continuation towards the upside, but overall we haven't really done too much this week. If we look at the SPY chart, I think you can see this a little bit better. This is Monday's price action. You can see we kind of drove towards the upside, but we're not overly bullish on the higher time frames. We're getting underneath your kind of previous all-time highs levels. So for the SPY and ES coming into today, the levels that we have marked out is your previous all-time highs, 6508. And now what we also have here is your 6493. So this is the level we'd like to see hold for ES coming into today. If we can hold this level, we can see a miniature bounce. I'm not that interested in looking for this higher low bounce. As I mentioned, the best longs, in my opinion, are going to occur above your 6507. What we have here for the ES, if we actually get underneath this key level, the next levels towards the downside here is going to be all the way back up and towards your back below towards your previous day lows. And this low that we created, this was from Nvidia earnings, this wick all the way down here. So there is a potential for ES to see some downside this morning. So we'll keep an eye out on ES, and the SPY will be open to playing both sides here of the market, just because, right, we have a soft bias, right? We are at all-time highs, but you can definitely see the momentum is slowing down. So I'm opening to playing both sides here for the major indices. As for the SPY, coming into today, the key levels that I have marked out really is going to be your 647.40, which in this case is your Wednesday's highs. And we also have your 640. So we have a couple key levels here for the SPY. If we want to see some upside, we're going to have to reclaim back above this level at a minimum for a continued pushback towards the upside, which is going to be above your 647.40s. If you want to see some downside here, what we like to see is one of two things: pop and fade off of your 647.40, or now it's going to be really underneath this 646.40 here on the SPY chart. If we zoom out, on the SPY, the actual key levels that we have marked out is just going to be your previous all-time high. So really the major level here on the SPY is going to be your Friday's highs of last week. And then we also have, right, your all-time highs, which is going to be all the way back from this 646.50. You can also mark out this key pivot high here as well. But basically on the 15-minute time frame, as long as SPY can maintain above this level, I would like to see the overall markets continue towards the upside. If we get underneath your 646.50s, then we can see some more downside here on the SPY and the rest of the market. Let me actually just put that level back up. All right, now let's go on to the NQ. So first things first, you can see the NQ is not really close to your all-time highs. So this happened due to kind of the tech rotation that we had really starting a couple weeks ago, where we had this nice drop towards the downside. But you can see if we're looking at the SPY and we're looking at this daily chart, you can see SPY is at your all-time highs, right? We made a new all-time highs yesterday, whereas the QQQ has failed to make a new all-time highs, or we haven't made it all-time highs as of yet. And you can see this is clearly not something you'd like to see if you're trying to trade any of these tech names, just because now the SPY is the leader, whereas the QQQ is lagging behind the overall market. Whereas what we usually like to see is either some of the tech names at all-time highs, or, right, the QQQ in itself at all-time highs, right, leading the market instead of the SPY in itself. So with this divergence that we've had, the past 2 weeks, it's made it very difficult for longs, especially if you're trading any of the tech names or you're trading the QQQ in itself, right? The strongest really chart has been SPY. Even IWM has had, right, some movement towards the upside just based off its higher time frames. But look at the QQQ coming into today, the key level that we have marked out, at least on the 15-minute and 1-hour time frame, is just going to be your Friday's highs of last week. So you can see we have multiple touches here. This was due to a very key level here as well, NVIDIA earnings, and then we also had this. So for the QQQ and NQ coming to today, your 23,660 is going to be key. If you maintain underneath this level, you can see this continue push back towards the downside. So that's going to be your key level. If we can reclaim this level, potentially hold, we could see this push back towards the upside. We do have this pretty big gap now back towards the highs. So we could be looking for the reclaim back above your 23,660s. But as I mentioned, I've been very cautious on longing tech, especially the Qs, just because the overall market has been lagging, right? QQQ lagging the SPY, which has made it very difficult. If you want to long something, you usually want to long something that has the strongest, or that's the leader of the market, or has relative strength. If you want to short something, you primarily want to short things that are relatively weak. As for the QQQ, key levels that we have marked out coming into today is just going to be this 574. So this 574, as you can see, last Friday's highs. We have multiple touches here, as you can see. So key levels coming into today, 574. If you can hold this level, potentially we could see this move back up and towards your 575. If we now get underneath this key level, then we're going to see a little bit more continuation down in towards your 571. So that's what we have for the SPY and Qs coming into today. If the levels are a little bit off, I'm going to have to readjust them, but you can see this is a good sign of, right, price action is not the greatest one. There's a lot of wicks kind of in between. Price isn't really respecting the levels very clearly. That just usually means we're in range, we're consolidating, and there's not really clear trends in the overall market. So that's what kind of this week's been. Just a lot of mean reversions, not really any clear trends in the market. It's been definitely a little bit of a tougher week. Let's go on to some of the names I'm looking for coming into today. Let's take a look at Tesla here. So coming into today here for Tesla, you can see we had a nice drop yesterday underneath its previous day lows. Key level we talked about was this 350. Nice retest off that level for this continuation towards the downside. Once we got underneath other key levels, 345. Next levels was all the way down and towards that 340. So coming into today here for Tesla, key levels that we have marked out is just going to be your 345, and we also have your 340. If you want to see any sort of longs, right, you like to see that reclaim back above your 345 for a push back towards the upside. If you want to see Tesla stay heavy, you prefer it underneath your 345, pop and fade for a potential move back down in towards your low that we created from yesterday, which is your 340 key psych. So that's what we have here for Tesla coming into today. So keep an eye out on this 340, right? You're going to be neutral. You're going to be open and playing both sides on this name. As for NVIDIA, we recently had earnings, which was on Wednesday. You can see pretty big wick to both sides yesterday. Nice kind of push right off the bat. Within the first candle, we actually already hit your all-time high. So within the first candle, we hit your all-time highs here on NVIDIA. And you can see kind of rejected off this level. And now we're basically inside of this range. So key levels for NVIDIA coming into today, we're going to essentially mark out your earnings high. And we're going to mark out your earnings low. You can also mark out your previous day lows. And also, this is technically not your previous day highs, but you had this wick within the first few minutes. But basically, key levels you can have marked out now is going to be this 182. And this is going to be the key level towards the upside. So for NVIDIA coming into today, any sort of longs, I'm really only interested in longs above now. It's going to be your 182 or preferably above your all-time highs, 184. I'm still waiting for that break here on the higher time frames. If we're looking for potential movements lower today here on NVIDIA, right, the key level is going to be your previous day lows. I'll be keeping an eye out on NVIDIA. If, let's say, we consolidate and we break underneath their previous day lows, we could potentially see this continuation lower underneath their previous day lows 177 for a push all the way down in towards that 172. So that's going to occur underneath your previous day lows. If you can get underneath, potentially we can see this earnings low, which is at your 172. So I'll keep an eye out on NVIDIA coming to today. Only if we can break underneath that previous day low level. And then for longs, it's going to be that 182. As for Apple, this one is showing some nice strength and continuing to push towards the upside. You can see higher lows are being built. If we're looking at Monday's price action, you can see Monday and the rest of the week, you can see nice continuation towards the upside. So for Apple coming into today, if you do want to see some more upside, now we just like to see it hold key levels. Key levels that we have marked out, 230.50, and we also have your 231.50. So what we like to see is it really maintain above this level for continuation higher, or we like to see it dip all the way back down in towards your 230.50. Right, it's going to currently open up right in between yesterday's range. So I expect a little bit of a choppier open, but the key levels are going to be that 231.50 for some more upside here on Apple. So those are the levels you want to have marked out. As for AMD, this one primarily just been consolidating. I'm not sure where my levels went on this one, but key levels that we have marked out is basically your high that we created from last Friday. So for AMD, key levels that we have marked out, you can see multiple touches on the higher time frames. Tried breaking out here, but ended up rejecting, and now we're just coming right back in between its range that we've created for this week. So for AMD, not really a clear setup. We wanted to see the break yesterday, kind of rejected here on the higher time frames, and now we're right back down in towards this range between your 169 and this 162. So for AMD, we're basically right back in the middle. I'm not too interested in trading this one. We could also mark out your previous day lows, which will be essentially now just your 167. So you'll have this level marked out. That's going to be the key level for you coming into today, 167, your previous day lows here on AMD. As for a few other tickers, Meta, not too much to talk about here. This one is primarily just consolidating in between the 750 and the 740 here. As for Google, this one we could talk about recently hit all-time highs, and we had some nice continuation yesterday. So we had this nice push towards the upside here on Google. Key levels that we have marked out is our previous all-time highs, which is our 208, and then we have our all-time highs that we created last week, which is this 211. You can see nice kind of continue push towards the upside here on Google, but now in the pre-market you can see dropping here. So really not that clear of a chart now, since we're breaking back underneath that Monday's low that we created. So for Google, we like to see really longs above your 211. Now we're basically right back in between the range that we created for this week. So not really too much I'm looking for here on this name. And really the rest of the tickers, you can see just a lot of it's not as clear. That just happens to do with the Qs and it not having a clear kind of higher time frames, plus lagging behind the overall market. So we can go on to another chart, even Amazon. This one looking nice for a potential move back up and towards your 233 here. Nice kind of break above your high that we created on Wednesday. But now this one's pulling back. So for Amazon coming into today, key levels that we have is going to be this 230. And that's going to be essentially your retest that you like to see hold for a push back towards the upside. So that's what we have for Amazon. Microsoft, similar thing here, 509 key level is just going to be, that's going to be your reclaim, at least on the 1 hour chart, for any sort of pushback towards the upside. If Microsoft does want to stay heavy, potential lower highs are being built. You could see this pop and fade off of this level. So 508 that we have established. And then for Netflix, it's going to be this 1236. So coming into today, for the overall markets here on the SPY and Qs, with it dropping here, coming into pre-market, I'm not overly bullish. We are at all-time highs here on the ES, but as I mentioned, there is a divergence between the ES and NQ, so not that bullish here on the NQ coming to market open. As for the SPY, similar thing. We do have this gap fill back towards the upside, but we just recently hit your all-time highs. I'm going to be open and playing both sides here on the indices, right? We have our key levels marked out. So coming to market open, we're going to be open and playing both sides. There is a potential for a reversal coming into today. I don't think it will occur during market open. That's just because every single day this week, we haven't really had a clear direction, right? Every single move that's happened within the first 30 minutes to an hour has been primarily just chopping around. And then we've had these late day movers, which will happen midday or closer to market close, which is fine, but they're just going to be late day movers. They're based off of the 5-minute time frame, and usually the open, at least this week, has been fairly choppy. So if we do end up moving either later into the day or we end up dropping later into the day, it's probably going to happen after 11 o'clock or maybe around 12. So for the SPY and Qs, the key levels that we have set. As for the overall tech names, as I mentioned, we're going to be open to playing both sides, just primarily scalp, since most of the higher time frames now has not been aligned. The only thing I like is Nvidia, just because it does have earnings on Wednesday. So I do expect that volatility to still be there. But the key levels now, as I mentioned, is going to be your previous day lows for shorts. And then we also have for longs above your 182. So that's what we have for Nvidia. And then the rest of the names, they're not that appealing to me, just based off the higher time frames. And then for some other names, we can take a look at that here in a second. So if you guys do have any charts or any tickers you'd like me to go over, I'll go over them for the next 10 minutes. We do have core PCE in about 10 minutes, so we'll wait for that. And then I'll develop my game plan for the rest of the day from there. So if you guys do have any charts or any tickers, you guys can drop them in the chat, and I'll go over those ones now. Alrighty, let's see. Oh, before I do that, if you guys are enjoying this so far, I appreciate if you guys drop me a like and sub. I also have a YouTube video coming out tomorrow, which is super exciting. I'm not sure if you guys saw the post, but I do have an interview with Tony. So that one's going to be dropping tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That video is basically packed full of knowledge. And he basically talks about how he got started and how he became a profitable trader. So that one's going to be at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow. If you guys also haven't joined the watch list, that one is in the description below as well. All right, let's see. First time here. Nice. What's up, Arnold? Check out the daily chart on the Qs if there's a gap back from May the 10th to May 8th to the 10th. May 8th. Oh, that's a long time ago. Yeah. Let's see. Can you check if there's a gap? Yeah, there's a gap, but this was a breakaway gap. This gap's not that relevant because now we're very far away from it. So that gap is not that relevant. Let's see. Good morning. Let me go on Palantir. So for Palantir, you can see we're on the 1 hour time frame. Just a lot more consolidation coming to this week. You can see after last week's big push towards the downside, if we're marking out this week's price action, we could just mark out this week's price action along with last Thursday and last Friday. You can see we've just been consolidating in between this range. There's been some opportunity where you could be looking for bounces at the low of the range or rejections at the top of the range. But primarily for Palantir, we've just been inside this 162 along with this 150. If you want to look for trades, we're going to have to go into lower time frames. And as I mentioned, right, just look for bounces and rejections. There hasn't been any really clear trend on this ticker. We've been just consolidating around this 150, 650, and that's the key area that we have marked out on a chart. As for Hood, this is a good sign that definitely the markets are slowing down here, is that whenever names like Palantir, Hood, right, these growth stocks slow down, even though the market is at all-time highs like SPY, right, that just means there's been a little bit of rotation out of tech, and that's why, right, IWM's been up, right, just because we had a little bit of a tech rotation. But for these names specifically, right, you can see we're showing a little bit more weakness now, right? We're consolidating, showing a little bit more weakness. It makes sense after having such a big push higher, but for something like Hood now, slowing down, key levels that we have marked out is just going to be your Wednesday's lows, and then now we can also have your previous day lows marked out here. So for Hood, we can actually just readjust this down in towards your previous day lows, and this also coincides with your Thursday's lows. So for Hood coming into today, if you can reject off of your previous day lows, we could be looking for this nice continuation towards the downside. This is actually going to be something I'll keep an eye out on for a continuation lower. So if the market wants to consolidate today or wants to pull back, Hood definitely has a higher time frame set up towards the downside, just underneath its previous day lows along with your Wednesday's lows. If we reclaim back above, then I'm not too interested in shorts. But if we can either pop and fade underneath this level or hold underneath their previous day lows, then I'll be looking for a continuation towards the downside. So we'll keep an eye out on Hood coming into today. As for SoFi, this one still showing a lot of strength. I talked about this one. This one most likely going to gravitate towards your all-time high. So for SoFi, recently broke outside of a key level, which is your 25 key psych. You can see broke above, now coming back down to retest. As long as you can maintain above your 25 key psych level, I'd like to see this continue push back up and towards your all-time highs now, which is going to be your 28. So we just like to see SoFi maintain above your 25 key psych if we want to see some continuation towards the upside. I'll go on to Intel next. When you say wait for the first 10 to 15 minutes after market open conditions, do you make that because if let's see, what if the break and retest appears within the first 5 minutes of market open and you miss it? So that's an opening drive play, right? There hasn't really been any opening plays as of late. So if you have an opening play, you can potentially prepare for that coming into market open for an opening drive. So that's when you'll be a little bit more aggressive if you have a hard bias, or maybe if you have some sort of news event where you're fairly bullish to one side, then you could be looking for a trade within the first probably 10 to 15 minutes if you have an opening play. If there's no opening play, you don't really have a bias like this whole week, right? If you tried trading the open within the first 10 to 15 minutes, you're probably going to lose because there hasn't been a clear direction, right? All the trades have been happening later into the session. So that's why you just want to wait whenever the markets are a little bit more volatile or we have cleaner sessions right off the bat, then you could be looking to be a little bit more aggressive. All right, as for AVGO key levels that we have marked out, 307, and they also have your previous day highs. We're also about to open up in the middle of the range. So previous day lows in the middle of the range, and then you have your previous day highs. For Intel looks like it's just consolidating. So Intel, this one can go either way, right? It's basically holding up. So the overall market, Intel long side kind of reclaim back above this 25 for continuation higher. Shorts, preferably underneath their previous day lows and also underneath your 24 if you want to see some downside. All right. Let me go down. Let me scroll down here as well. All right, we have about 4 minutes until red folder news here. Let's go over a couple other names. Let me scroll back up. Yeah, went over SoFi already. Hood, went over that one. Palantir, TM. Yeah, so TM, this one's just pulling back a little bit here as well. So key levels that we have on TM after this big push towards the upside, it's your 78, and also now we have just your 72. So for TM, key levels, we have those marked out. We can also have this marked out here as well, which is just going to be your previous day highs. You could just mark out multiple touches. So previous day highs, kind of this 75 along with your Tuesday's lows. If you want to see any sort of upside, right, reclaim back above your 75 hold for this continued pushback towards upside. If you want to see some downside, now it's going to be underneath primarily the 72 and also underneath your this week's lows, which is going to be this Wednesday's key pivot level. As for OKLO, this one, if we zoom out here, yeah, this one looks good for a continuation towards your all-time highs. Once again, the key levels that we have marked out is just going to be this key pivot high, and also we have your previous day highs. So for OKLO, this one's been basing, right? Nice base, or continuation towards the upside. Now we just like to see these higher lows be built for this push up and towards your 80 and above. So for OKLO, the levels I'm going to have marked out today is primarily just going to be this body that we can have marked out. 77, where we have this touch here. You can see we have multiple touches yesterday. So if you do want to see some more continuation, hold above this 77 for this push towards the upside. If we do break underneath, potential kind of reversal play here. So that's what we have. Does both way mean calls in? So we're open to playing both sides. So that basically means we have no bias coming to market open. Whereas if we have a clear bias on a chart, let's say we have higher time frames, or we have news, then we're going to be leaning a little bit more towards one side. Currently, especially for this week, we've been open to playing both sides. So if the market is looking bullish on the day, or we have intraday setups towards the upside, then we're going to be looking for calls. If it breaks underneath their previous day lows and maybe shows relative weakness, then we could be looking for puts. So we're open to playing both sides. What prop firms? I personally don't trade prop firms, but there's plenty out there. You can trade Apex, Top Step, Tradeify. I have no affiliation with any prop firm, so the ones that pay out, right? They always change. Especially the prop firm space, they keep changing on a week-to-week, month-to-month basis. It just depends what has the best deal and what pays out. So they always keep changing. I wouldn't say one prop firm is the best. When you mark out the previous day highs and lows, you include the wicks or just the bodies. I include both. That's great news. I'm also looking forward to your latest video. Can you also show us how you choose the strike price? Strike price will always just be weeklies. Sorry, there'll be one out the money or one with most volume, and be weekly contracts. Can you please push your email so I can contact? Yeah, I got to put that in the description as well. Why don't you have overnight on? If you could, would you have it on? So yeah, the overnight is only on the futures. So if you're trading tech names, pre-market opens at 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay, we just had core PCE here as well. As it's pending, let's see. Answered that question. Are there better trades when the time interval is longer between the break and retest? It's all context based. So if you're on, let's say if you're comparing a 5-minute break and retest to a 1 minute or a 1 hour break and retest, it's really just context based. But usually the higher time frames hold more power. So for the core PC, we actually just came in, as you can see, just right as the overall market. Okay, so core PC just came in. You can see we're getting a little bit of reaction here right off our key levels, but it just came in as expected. So for core PC, forecasted 0.3, and then the actual is 0.3 as well. So fairly neutral, but you can see a little bit of reaction coming to market open. So coming into today here, as I mentioned, the SPY is a lot more bullish than the ES. Sorry, the SPY and ES is a lot more bullish than the QQQ, a along with the NQ. So if we want to long anything, primarily we're going to be looking for longs on the SPY. And if we want to short, we can short some tech names or we can short the Qs themselves. The levels that we have coming into market open. So for the QQQ, what we have here is we have our 575 40s, and we also have this 574. For the SPY, the key levels that we have is now just going to be your Wednesday's highs, which is going to be key. And then for the ES, we kind of have this previous all-time high. So the levels are a little bit conflicting here. But for the ES, what we have here is your 6494, and then we have your previous all-time highs. The only way I like some more upside here is really above your high that we created, which is your Wednesday's highs, and this is your previous all-time high. So if you can get above this, reclaim back above this level, then I'm interested in a little bit more towards the upside. Currently coming to market open, if we're in between this range, I'm going to be a little bit more neutral. So I'm bullish above your 6508. If we're in between this range, I'm a little bit more neutral. If we can break underneath now, it's going to be your 6494. Then I'm going to be leaning a little bit more towards the downside. So currently, right, that's essentially the game plan I have coming to market open. It's really going to be based off of the ES in itself, because that's going to be the leading indice. As for the QQQ, the key levels I have is your 574. You can see so far kind of defending this Friday's highs from last week. So for the QQQ, I'm going to lay this out here, right? So if we can break underneath, I'm going to be leaning more towards the downside underneath your 574. If you can break back above your 575.50, I'm going to be leaning a little bit more towards the upside. If we're in between here, then I'm just going to be more neutral and waiting for price to see the reaction that we have either off your 575.50 or this 574. So that's what we have on the major indices coming into market open. As for some of the charts I'm interested in based off that pop that we had, Tesla key levels that we have is just going to be your 345 potential kind of hold and reclaim back above this level for this push. Really in between yesterday's range, since it was a fairly big range yesterday. That's the key levels that you're going to have marked out here on Tesla. I'm not as interested unless it's going to be primarily just an intraday setup. Nvidia, you can see not really doing too much, very little reaction. Apple, this one still looks good for continuation higher, so we'll keep an eye out on Apple if this one does want to hold above your 231.60s. So this is the key level that we have marked out here on Apple, along with your previous day close. And then for the rest of tickers, yeah, really not really that much of a reaction. So the names that we primarily trade aren't really showing too much. So we'll primarily have to look for the indices themselves. So we'll be focusing on the indices. We can also keep an eye out on Google if it does want to reclaim back above this 211. So this 211 level is going to be key if we want to see any sort of pushback towards the upside. So that's what we have for Google. And then Amazon looks decent, at least on the higher time frames as well. Currently inside the range, but this one, higher time frames are still holding up. So primarily today, we're going to be looking at the major indices themselves. Let me actually just refine some of my levels here that I have. So we have this. Let me actually just refine this. So these are the levels I have on the SPY. So refine my levels. We have your 648, which also lines up with the ES, the previous all-time highs. And then we also have the low that we have, which is your 646.50. So these are the levels I have for the SPY coming into today. And then for the Qs, I already have them set. Let's go on to IWM since this one has been bullish. So IWM, I actually like this one a lot just because the higher time frames is looking good, right? You can see we're finally breaking out on the daily chart. This is a good sign of something that is fairly bullish, right? If we're comparing IWM to something like the SPY or the Qs in the last 20 to 40 sessions, you can see this one has a lot more clear of a trend, right? Qs has been unable to break back above your all-time highs, whereas something like IWM, we've had this nice push towards upside, pullback, kind of just coming back into retest levels, and then nice continuation once again. So for IWM, this one has a clear trend on the daily chart. Now you can see we're above your Friday's highs. We're coming back to retest this level. So what we'd like to see now for IWM is the hold above your 235. I'd actually be interested in looking for IWM as long as you can maintain above your 235.50. We can see this push back up and towards your 237 and above as long as you can maintain above your 235.50. So we'll keep an eye out on IWM above this key pivot high. All right. Um, let's see. Answer a few more questions and then most likely get ready for market open. Do you have a video on position size, how you approach when loss has been a struggle for me? Do you have a video on position size and how you approach the next day? Yeah, you can check out the, I have a few videos on it. I forget exactly what it's called, but if I can find it, I'll link it to you, but I do have some videos on that. How do you mark out the level as a zone instead of straight line? I'll just mark it out from the wick to the body. Would you say the SPY is bullish and a bull? So the SPY is still bullish because we're at all-time highs. So the SPY is still very much bullish, but it's not in a very clear trend, right? When we're in a bullish channel, this is still fairly bullish, but the best trades are going to occur when we're trending, right? When we're using these resistance levels turning into support. When we're in a clear trend, right? This technically is still a trend as well, but it's not as clear. It's just more of in a channel. So this is still good for continuation higher, but not as good if we have a clear trend towards the upside. Tesla dropped intraday yesterday. If you're a bullish bias, do you ever take a trade like that? So Tesla, you're right. You're going to be open to playing both sides for something like yesterday, right? Once it breaks underneath your previous day lows, then you'll be a little bit more interested, right? Before then, you're not going to be bearish, but once it breaks your previous day lows, then you can flip your bias and you can be looking for a continuation lower. Will you wait for revised consumer sentiment and inflation expectations before trading? I'll probably wait today as well, just because this whole week we haven't had any big moves that happen within the first 15 to 30 minutes. So I'll probably just wait regardless, just for the market to digest for the first 15 to 30 minutes. Plus we have revised consumer sentiment, and then we'll be looking for either a 5-minute setup or a setup later into the day, right? That's just kind of how the theme has been, at least for this week. We'll see what happens coming into market open. As I mentioned, I'm very cautious just because if we reject off of this level, potentially we could see some more downside, right? We could see a reversal in play today. That is not out the picture. If we break underneath, now it's going to be this level here, which is essentially the level that we have in the pre-market. If we can break underneath this level, potentially we could see a bigger reversal, right? It's the end of the month, right? So potential move towards the downside. So it's the end of the month, end of the week. We've been only moving higher. We also hit your all-time highs level. There's a little bit of divergence. I wouldn't be surprised if a potential move underneath, now it's going to be your pre-market lows if we see some more downside here. So that's why I have the level marked out. As for upside, right, we also have those levels marked out here as well. All right. Let's see. Answered that one. Thank you, Jack. I love it. Transparent, genuine, helping every trader. I'll go through the videos again and see if I can find it. Yeah, if I can find it, I'll link that in the chat. All right. Yeah, that's going to be it for me today. I'm going to get ready for market open here. As I mentioned, be cautious, right? Be open to playing both sides of the market. It is the end of the week. Usually these type of days, right, I'm not expecting too much coming to market open, but sometimes these are the days where you have some big moves in the market, especially with it just being kind of choppy all week. We haven't had any clear direction. So we'll see if we can have some nice price action coming into market open. If we can break back underneath key levels, don't be surprised if we see a little bit of a bigger move lower, especially on the NQ, right? The SPY is bullish, but if we're looking to short anything, it's going to primarily be the tech and the QQQ in itself. So we'll keep an eye out on some of these tech names here. And then we'll also keep an eye out on NVIDIA. We are in a range, but maybe if you can break underneath its previous day lows, potentially we can see some more downside in the overall market. So that's going to be it for me today. We'll see what shapes up coming into market open. We do have, it's the end of the week, as I mentioned, end of the month, and we also have a long weekend. We have Labor Day, so markets are closed on Monday. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. But yeah, that's going to be it for me today. If you guys did enjoy that, appreciate if you guys drop me a like and sub. YouTube video coming out tomorrow, which is going to be really solid, interviewing Tony. So that's going to come out at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And also, if you guys haven't joined the watch list, that's also in the description below as well. All right, take care, everyone. Have a great rest of the weekend and enjoy that holiday. All right, peace.